The second part in lesson 2.1 has us looking at parallel and perpendicular lines, along with some application. If you have two lines that are parallel, you know that their slopes are the same. And if two lines are perpendicular, then the slopes are negative or opposite reciprocals of each other. Which means one has to be positive, one has to be negative, and then they're reciprocals. Determine if the pair of lines is parallel, perpendicular, or neither. It says the line through the 2 points, what we'll do is we'll just identify them as x1 and y1, x2 and y2. For line 1, let's calculate the slope. If we do y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, the double negative would make a positive, and we have negative 4 plus 1, which is negative 3, over 6 minus 3, which is positive 3, and that equals negative 1. For line 2, do the same thing, just create the slope. We have our x1 and our y1, x2 and y2. That's an x right there. And then we just apply the slope formula once again. 7 minus 5, if we do y2 minus y1. Negative 2 minus negative 4, x2 minus x1. Again, we have that double negative on the bottom, but on the top we have 7 minus 5, which is 2. On the bottom, negative 2 plus 4, which is also 2, and that equals positive 1. Negative 1 and positive 1 have opposite or negative slopes, but they're also, or negative signs, not negative slopes, but they're also reciprocals of each other. The reciprocal of 1 is 1. Therefore, these two lines are perpendicular. In the next example, do the same thing. We have two lines. Identify their coordinates as x1, y1, x2, y2, and let's find the slope. For line 1, if we do y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, we get 1 over positive 3. For line 2, let's see what we get. We have x1, y1, and x2, y2. We should be really proficient at slope when we're done. y2 minus y1 is 4 minus 2. x2 minus x1 is 0 minus negative 6. 4 minus 2 is 2. 0 minus negative 6 is positive 6. And that reduces to 1/3. The slopes are the same, meaning these two lines are parallel. Now, if you have an example where it doesn't match one of these, you would just say it's neither. Find the slope-intercept form of the equation of a line passing through 2, negative 1, and it's parallel and perpendicular to the line 2x minus 3y equals 5. We'll have two parts to our answer here, a parallel line and a perpendicular line. The first thing we should do, though, is find our original slope. And for that, we'll just look at the original equation. 2x minus 3y is equal to 5. Now, this is in general form, and the slope definition in general form is negative a over b. And in this case, a is 2, so we would make that negative 2. And b is negative 3. That means the slope is positive 2/3. That's kind of what we'll work with for parts a and b. For a, we want a parallel slope. So our parallel slope is going to be the same thing. It'll be 2/3. So now we need a point, our x1 and our y1. Well, that was given to us up here in the given information. It's 2, negative 1. So that's our x1 and our y1. To write any equation that has a point and a slope, we'll start off with that point-slope formula. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Plugging in what we know, y1 is negative 1. Our slope is 2/3. X minus x1, which is 2. And now we simplify. On the left, we have a double negative, gives us y plus 1. On the right, distribute the 2/3 in. 2/3 times x just stays 2/3 times x. Minus, if we take 2/3 times 2, that's the same as 2 over 1. And when you multiply the top and multiply the bottom. Last but not least, to get y by itself, subtract 1. So I'll subtract 1 over here. But I need a common denominator, so that's the same as subtracting 3/3. And that gives us a common denominator to work with. Finally, we have y equals 2/3 x. And then we have negative 4/3 minus 3/3. And that becomes negative 7/3. And there's your equation that's parallel. Now let's do the same thing for perpendicular. The first thing you want to do is figure out your perpendicular slope. To do that, we're going to change the sign, which means our perpendicular slope is going to be negative, and then we'll take the reciprocal, so negative 3/2. That's all you got to do. We keep the same point because it says so in the directions, 2, -1. I'll label that x1 and y1, and then we go through our process just one more time. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, and we plug in what we know. Again, it'll be y minus -1 equals our slope of negative 3/2 times x minus 2. We have a double negative one more time on that left-hand side, making that y plus 1. On the right, distribute the negative 3/2 in, and that will be negative 3/2 x. And now when we take negative 3/2 times negative 2 over 1, the 2's would cancel out, and we have a double negative, so that makes that positive 3. So, or it would be negative 3 times negative 2, which would be 6 over 2 times 1, which would be 2, and 6 over 2 also gives you 3. So either way, you kind of walk through that process. And finally, to get y by itself, subtract 1. Your perpendicular line that goes through the same point to -1, y equals negative 3/2 x plus 2. Last but not least, incorporating word problems for some real-life application. Anytime we have a word problem, it's always your best bet to read the problem carefully. Maybe underline key words and start to think about what's happening in this problem. What are we trying to solve for? Once you kind of figure out what you're trying to solve for, determine what your variables are next. What does x equal and what does y equal? What are they standing for? Create at least 2 ordered pairs that represent inputs and outputs for the word problem. And then use those 2 ordered pairs and point slope form to write your linear function for the information. All right, so let's take a look at our first word problem. We'll just do one in the video and we'll do the other one in class. It says the sales for Under Armour were approximately $25.3 billion in 2013 and $27.8 billion in 2014. Using only this information, write a linear equation that gives you sales in terms of the year. So that's going to help us decide what our x's and y's are. So we've got some information here. In 2013, they made some money. In 2014, they made a little bit more. You know, a couple extra billion, no big deal. So it says write a linear equation that gives sales in terms of the year. So what that means is sales would be your output and the given year is your input. So in 2013, that year, then the output would be the billions of dollars. In 2014, another input, the 27.8 billion, is your output in billions of dollars. Thinking about that, our variables will let x equal the year and y equal sales. As an ordered pair then, we have 2 sets of information. In the year 2013, they made $25.3 billion. And in the year 2014, they made $27.8 billion. from that information, what we can do is write the equation for the line that would predict the sales for any given year. So when you know 2 points, identify the coordinates x1, y1, and x2, y2. If the slope isn't given, we have to calculate that first. y2 minus y1, 27.8 minus 25.3 over x2 minus x1. Well, this works out kind of nice for us at least. If we take 27.8 minus 25.3, they get 2.5. 2014 minus 2013 is 1. So the slope is 2.5, and that would be billions of dollars, which means each year they're making $2.5 billion more, just based on this given information. To create the equation for any year, we'll do y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. From our information above, y1 is 25.3. Our slope is 2.5, and 25.3 happened in the year 2013. From here, whoops, I forgot a parenthesis, didn't I? There we go. From here, we'll just simplify. Notice it stays y minus 25.3, but watch what happens. When we distribute the 2.5 in, we get 2.5x, and then if I take 2.5 times 2013, I get 5,032.5. Add 25.3 to the other side. I'm going to give myself a little bit more space here. Hang on for just a second. Whoa, crazy. All right. And that gives us y equals 2.5x minus 5,007.2. That would be the linear function for a given year modeling the sales for Under Armour. So now it says predict the sales for this year. So that would be our last part right there. Predict the sales for this year. Well, this year it's 2019. That's your x value. Then y would equal 2.5 times 2019 minus 5,007.2. 2.5 times 2019 is 5,047.5 minus 5,007.2. Whoops, there we go. There we go, I had to make it smaller one more time. The approximate, we'll say approximate number of sales for Under Armour would be $40.3 billion. Just based on our linear function. Now, like I said, we'll finish the second example in class tomorrow.